time we come to your town, make sure you come to one of these events because it's something special.
We want to welcome back a good friend and, again, one of the great investigative reporters in the business today or any time, and that would be Charle Gasparino. He is the author of Sellout. HarperCollins is the publisher of that book, and you can see it on Amazon. Buy it for your Kindle or buy the hard copy right there. Charlie, welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It made the bestseller list thanks to partly you helping me out here. So it's number 8 on the New York Times, which is nice. And when you're doing these things, you're myopically focused on your book when there's a whole world of stuff out there that's going on in business. And last night I wrote a story, and it appears in what's known as the Daily Beast. It's kind of an online tabloid that Tina Brown put together that covers business and politics. And I wrote about what I think is a pretty significant thing. Has not that much to do with my book, but it's the two Bear Stearns hedge fund managers who were acquitted last week. And I did some reporting after that, and I found that was really a major. I mean, it's hard to underestimate a major setback for what was beginning to be what was planned at one point is pretty dramatic and wide, far-reaching prosecutions of people at the center of the subprime crisis who the government was looking at whether they purposely, intentionally misled investors about about their firm's financial condition before everything blew up. And there was an ongoing, criminal investigation of the Lehman Brothers situation, looking at all the people at Lehman's, including Dick Fold, the former CEO. There's obviously one into AIG, looking at Joseph Cassano, the former head of the financial products groups, who liked the Lehman Brothers, assured everybody everything was okay before it wasn't. There was stuff going on with Merrill Lynch and Citigroup. I know there were SEC investigations into whether the people there properly disclosed back in 2007. Because remember, the sort of losses at Citigroup and Merrill began in 2007 that led to the firings of their CEOs. But the public statements from the company in 2007, were obviously in variance to what happened, and they were looking at stuff there, and obviously Cuomo's looking at Ken Lewis and Bank of America and disclosures that both made before shareholders approved the Merrill deal, which in a few weeks after they approved it was clear that Merrill was losing big bucks, and it really hurt B of A. So those are all the investigations. There's probably ones I don't know about. And what this did was throw a huge monkey wrench, because it sounds logical that those guys did something wrong, but really putting it to the test of fraud in a criminal sense, did they intentionally say X, is a lot more difficult. And what I write in this column is here's why it's a lot more difficult. I really do believe that a lot of these players thought everything was going to be okay. And one of the reasons why is because in the past, it always was okay. The Fed came in, lowered interest rates, they would bail them out. In the end, the government was such a participant in the easy money, the throwing money at problems and making risk like a no-lose game almost for Wall Street. Remember, Lehman Brothers blew up almost in 1994, right? There was a Mexican peso crisis and other bonds that they held. In 1998, they really were on death's door. And each time they came back with more risk, and they came back stronger in a sense. Like Dick Fold after 1998, I remember in 2000, 2001, he was considered one of the best, and even up until 2007, he was considered one of the best CEOs on Wall Street. So I think it's kind of logical that they would be irrationally exuberant, and I'll tell you, I don't think that's a crime. Do you know any law against irrational exuberance?
No, I don't. And I also, Charlie, we all know that they always want to put a skin on the wall. It's one of the ways they move up the political ladders, and it's also, the perp walks and all the things that they do with these guys. Here were two guys running a hedge fund, folks, at Bear Stearns. Did they have losses? Yes. Were they optimistic? Well, stocks were much lower than where they purchased them, and they thought that these stocks were going to rebound. You would be optimistic, too. We've all been there, been in a bad investment, and yet been optimistic about the upside from the level the stock is at.
Absolutely.
And these are hedge fund managers There wasn't that smoking gun where they were saying, well, I can't believe these chumps are giving us money because we don't know what the hell we're doing. There wasn't anything like that, Charlie. There instead were just actual losses, and then whether or not these guys could have basically just pumped up the potential for their returns to sell a bunch of, chumps into this investment scheme. And these were two guys that were pretty good and now are probably broke from this prosecution. Is that not also correct?
Yeah, I know Ralph Ciaffi more than I know the other guy, and I think Ralph's a nice guy, a very good guy. I never thought he was a liar. My point is this about them, and I think if I was going to upbraid them about anything, those two guys, I would say maybe you should have been more forthcoming. I think if you look at some of those emails that they had, it just showed a level of sort of concern, that wasn't completely contradicted by their public statements, but it just seemed they were much more concerned in their emails about the end being near than what they told investors. And although they didn't tell investors that everything was going to be rosy, they told investors they're fighting through it. You know what I'm saying? It was the only thing I would tell them if I was to advise them. And I think this gets to the heart of Wall Street. There are very few people that sell you stuff on Wall Street that tell you the God's honest truth. And And if you were going to put everybody in jail for spinning and being a salesman, you'd have to lock everybody up, right? I mean, what do you think happens in the process of selling? You sit down with your team, you hash out all the details, right? And you say, this is how we're going to present it to people. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that is not fraud. What those emails showed is that Ciaffi and Tanine sat down, they thought about all the possibilities, clearly, and they came away thinking, well, maybe we can get through this. They didn't share every possibility with investors, and they were trying to sort of equate that with a purposeful sort of misinformation, a purposeful intent to lie to people. When that's just how business works sometimes, and that's how Wall Street works. And I'm not saying what Ciaffi and Tanine was 100% right or the right, from a purely philosophical sense, but that's not fraud to me.
Thank you. Charlie Gasparino, folks. Again, you can get his book on Amazon. It's The Sellout, Charlie Gasparino. Thank you, Charlie, very much for that, sir.
Thank you, John.
You can also read him on The Daily Beast, folks, thedailybeast.com. Great article on exactly what he was covering right there. And his book right behind Mitch Albom on that New York Times bestseller list. That's pretty good company. Back with more right after this.
This is the Biz Radio Network.